You know that feeling. You wake up in the morning, pull back the covers, and swing your legs over the side of the bed.
Yeah, and before your feet even hit the floor, you're already doing the sort of mental calculus.
Exactly. You brace yourself for that familiar deep ache in your lower back, or you just anticipate that inevitable loud pop in your knee when you stand up.
Right, you can practically feel that tight, creaky resistance in your shoulders before you even reach for a shirt.
And as you finally stand up, waiting for your body to awkwardly warm up just to walk to the kitchen, you probably think the exact same thing millions of other people think in that precise moment.
Which is, well, I guess this is just what getting older feels like.
Yes, it is an incredibly universal experience. And we've basically been culturally conditioned to accept that waking up feeling physically older than we actually are is just, I don't know, a mandatory toll we pay for the passage of time.
It really is. The assumption is just that biological aging comes with this unavoidable penalty, and that penalty is pain and stiffness.
We treat it like an expiring warranty on a car,
Yeah.
like the parts are just inevitably failing,
Yeah.
which is such a depressing way to view our own bodies.
Very defeatist, yeah.
But today, we are doing a deep dive into some fascinating source material that completely challenges that whole assumption. We are looking at excerpts from BIODYNAMIX, Restoring Joint Hydration for Effortless Movement.
And this material is really eye-opening.
It really is. And our mission for you today is to discover why the secret to getting your mobility back might not actually be about trying to fix broken joints, but rather about understanding a hidden underlying mechanism called joint hydration.
That's the key right there.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if I don't have to just accept a future of dreading the stingers, I want to know exactly how that works.
I think we all do, and it is a profound paradigm shift. What we're really doing today is taking the entire conversation away from age and this entrenched idea of permanent wear and tear.
Right, getting away from that whole worn-out parts concept.
Exactly. Instead, we're zooming in on the fascinating, fluid-rich environment that exists entirely inside the joint.
Which is such a different way to think about it.
It is. Changing our focus from the solid bone to the fluid around it completely changes how we look at human movement from the ground up.
To really grasp that, though, I feel like we first have to dismantle a pretty massive assumption.
Oh, absolutely. The wear and tear myth.
Yeah, because for you listening, and honestly for me too, the default assumption is that joint pain simply equals structural damage.
Right, that bone-on-bone idea.
Exactly. If my knee hurts or, if it grinds when I bend down to pick something up, my brain immediately conjures up an X-ray image of bone just violently grinding on bone.
Which is a terrifying mental image.
It really is. I just assume the cartilage is worn out or that years of playing sports, running, or carrying heavy things have just eroded the joint architecture entirely. We literally call it wear and tear.
We do, and the imagery we use is incredibly destructive. People just naturally assume their discomfort is caused by permanent structural degradation.
Like it's just gone forever.
Right. They think the physical joint is ground away, or that they just drew the short straw and inherited genetically bad knees.
Right, the bad knees excuse. I hear that all the time.
But the newer conversation in the world of joint health is completely sidestepping that destructive imagery. It's focusing heavily on joint lubrication deep inside the joint capsule.
And just to be crystal clear for everyone listening, we aren't talking about systemic hydration here.
No, not at all.
We aren't saying the solution to a grinding knee is to just force yourself to drink another glass of tap water or carry around one of those giant, gallon-sized water bottles all day.
Yeah, that is a really common misconception. Systemic hydration is obviously important for your overall health, but this is a highly localized type of hydration.
Okay, localize how?
We are talking about the specific, thick fluid environment housed within the joint capsule itself.
Got it.
When that highly specialized environment loses its volume and thickness, you encounter what's called the dry joint issue.
A dry joint.
Right. A dry joint simply loses its smooth gliding capability because the protective fluid barrier has thinned out.
Wait, so when my knees are clicking or grinding on the stairs, it doesn't automatically mean my cartilage is gone? It might just mean they're, thirsty.
What's fascinating here is that the clicking, the grinding, that heavy stiffness, it often isn't a sign that your body is physically destroyed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, your body hasn't forgotten how to move. The physical architecture of the joint, like the cartilage and the bone, is often still perfectly capable of functioning.
So the hardware is fine.
Exactly. It simply lacks the smooth internal hydration support it once had to facilitate that movement, without friction.
That reframing is actually a huge relief. I mean, structural destruction feels so permanent, like a bridge that has collapsed.
Right, you can't just uncollapse a bridge.
Exactly. But a dry joint feels like a mechanical issue that can actually be addressed and optimized.
It is entirely mechanical.
Okay, but if this internal joint fluid is essentially doing the job of motor oil, why does the body suddenly stop producing it? Does the capsule just dry out as we age, or is something actively draining it? Let's get into the actual mechanics of this. What exactly is happening inside a healthy, hydrated joint versus a dry one?
Well, to understand the mechanism, you have to picture how a joint is actually designed. Your joints are fundamentally built to move smoothly under immense pressure.
Right, they handle our whole body weight.
Exactly. Every single time you take a step, bend your knees, or rotate your shoulders, your joints are relying on a very specific cushioning and lubricating system to absorb shock and reduce friction.
Like a suspension system in a car.
Very much like that. Inside a healthy joint, there is a specialized gel-like fluid that acts almost exactly like a heavy-duty lubricant in a complex machine.
And what does that fluid actually do?
It allows the cartilage to glide effortlessly over itself instead of catching or grinding under the pressure of your entire body weight.
So it's literally a physical barrier of fluid, preventing the solid parts from rubbing together. Which means when that fluid starts to thin out or decrease in volume, things go bad.
The frictionless glide completely disappears.
Wow.
Yeah, the shock absorption becomes significantly less effective because that fluid cushion is compromised. Your overall flexibility just drops.
And I imagine you feel that physically.
Oh, absolutely. The physical symptoms of that fluid loss are exactly what people complain about the most. Tightness after sitting at a desk for a few hours, a sharp reduction in flexibility, and of course that notorious morning stiffness we talked about at the very beginning.
Man, the morning stiffness is such a universal tell. And reading through the biodynamics material, the mechanism behind why mornings are so notoriously rough makes perfect sense.
It really does when you look at the mechanics.
It really comes down to inactivity. During periods of rest, like sleeping for 8 uninterrupted hours, joints that are already under-lubricated tend to feel even tighter.
Because the fluid isn't circulating.
Right. They literally stiffen up because the joint isn't in motion. And it takes the physical act of movement, of getting out of bed and walking around, to gradually warm up the joint and circulate whatever lubrication is actually left.
Inactivity compounds the lack of fluid. Movement is what normally helps distribute that lubrication across the cartilage, almost like a sponge soaking up and releasing water.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, so when you lie still, a joint that is already running low on this vital fluid settles into a state of really high friction.
Think of an old squeaky door hinge on a house. The metal of the hinge isn't necessarily rusted away or structurally destroyed.
Right, the hinge itself is usually fine.
Exactly. The physical components are perfectly intact, but it desperately needs WD-40 to glide silently again.
And if you just force that dry door open, it screeches and grinds in protest. You can literally feel the resistance in your hand as you push it.
It fights back.
It does. But if you introduce the right lubrication directly into the mechanism, suddenly it swings open effortlessly with zero sound.
Because the door was never broken.
Exactly. The environment just lacked the necessary lubrication to function properly.
It's a mechanical friction issue, not structural destruction. But if we take that mechanical friction in the body, we really have to acknowledge how it bleeds into every other aspect of our lives.
It affects everything.
Because a squeaky door is just annoying.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But a grinding knee or a stiff lower back creates an entirely different kind of friction.
It creates mental and emotional friction. The physical reality of a dry joint dictates how you interact with your entire environment.
And that realization is probably the most impactful part of this entire deep dive for me. The hidden toll this takes on a person's life.
It's heavily underestimated.
The biggest frustration people describe in these situations isn't always severe, agonizing pain. It's the loss of ease.
Yes. The loss of ease is a quiet, insidious thief.
That's a great way to put it.
When your joints lack lubrication, simple actions that used to be completely automatic, things you never gave a second thought to, suddenly become mentally noticeable.
You start anticipating the movement before you even make it.
Exactly. You have to start thinking about movements that should be invisible.
Like standing up from a deep, soft couch. Or walking down a flight of stairs carrying a laundry basket.
Hauling a heavy bag of groceries from the trunk of the car, getting out of bed.
You suddenly have to brace yourself for these incredibly mundane tasks. So what does this all mean for you in your actual day-to-day life. It means you start doing this subconscious mental math.
And that mental math is exhausting. You look at a task, weigh the physical cost of the friction, and decide if it's worth it.
It fundamentally changes your behavior.
It does. You hesitate, you move a little slower. You might decide not to run upstairs to grab a book you forgot on the nightstand because the effort of navigating the stairs just isn't worth the discomfort of the dry joints.
Picture a grandparent wanting to get down on the living room floor to play with their toddler grandchild.
That's a classic example.
They look at the floor. They think about how stiff their knees feel. They think about how hard it will be to push themselves back up.
The math just doesn't add up for them.
Right. They do the mental math, and instead of getting down on the rug, they just sit on the sofa and watch.
Which is heartbreaking, really.
It is. Because you don't wake up totally immobile one day. You just quietly stop taking that evening walk you used to love. You pass on the weekend travel plans. Because the idea of navigating the airport terminals feels way too daunting.
You slowly, almost invisibly, shrink the borders of your world to avoid the friction.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is why restoring joint movement matters on a profound level.
It's not just about physical health.
Exactly. It is fundamentally about preserving our daily freedom. Mobility is deeply, intrinsically connected to our independence, our confidence, and our psychological sense of feeling capable in the world.
When you lose that smooth, effortless motion, you don't just lose physical capability, you lose a piece of your emotional youth.
You feel less vibrant,
Less active, less independent, everything just feels heavier.
which explains why the traditional ways we've tried to solve this problem feel so deeply inadequate.
They really missed the mark.
If the core problem is this root-level loss of mechanical lubrication, a loss that is literally stealing our independence and shrinking our world, then surface-level fixes just aren't going to cut it. You can't just slap a Band-Aid on a dry joint.
They fall entirely short because they completely ignore the mechanism. For decades, the vast majority of joint products and interventions have focused almost exclusively on surface-level support.
Meaning they just target the pain?
Right. They emphasize temporary comfort. They are designed to essentially mask the discomfort or numb the sensation of that physical friction.
While completely ignoring the rapidly drying environment deeper inside the joint capsule itself.
Exactly.
Going back to our door hinge analogy,
Yeah.
it's literally like putting earplugs in so you don't hear the squeaky door hinge.
That's a perfect analogy.
You haven't fixed the hinge at all. You haven't added any WD-40. The metal is still grinding. You are just artificially ignoring the screech.
And eventually, that hinge is going to get worse.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because consumers are getting smarter and demanding actual solutions, the entire industry is being forced to evolve.
Thankfully, yes.
The modern consumer wellness trend is aggressively demanding root cause approaches, not just quick, numbing fixes.
That demand for mechanism-driven solutions is precisely where products like BIODYNAMIX Joint Genesis come into the picture.
And they tackle it differently.
Very differently. What makes the biodynamics philosophy fundamentally different is that it was formulated specifically around restoring that healthier joint hydration and lubrication.
But how does a root cause approach actually get the hydration back inside a sealed joint capsule? Are we stimulating the body to produce more of this fluid, or just changing the environment so it stops drying out?
Well, the approach is actually inspired by Ivy League research that bothered to investigate the biological root causes behind why joints become stiff and restricted in the first place.
Instead of just looking for chemical ways to temporarily soothe the symptoms.
Exactly. The goal is to provide the body with the specific nutritional support it needs to naturally maintain and replenish that thick, lubricating synovial fluid.
Synovial fluid, right.
By nourishing the environment that produces the fluid, you are addressing the dryness at its origin.
So the goal isn't just, let's make this knee hurt less for the next 4 hours so I can get through a round of golf.
No, not at all.
The goal is, let's help the joint actually feel smoother, stronger, and more flexible by actively supporting the internal lubrication environment so the friction doesn't happen to begin with.
Which is a massive philosophical shift.
There really is. We are moving away from treating joints as worn out, dying parts that need temporary relief, and treating them as living, dynamic environments that simply need root cause hydration support.
This raises an important question for you to consider as you listen to this. Think about your own internal dialogue regarding your physical body.
Oh, that's a good point.
When you wake up and feel that stiffness, or when you hesitate before climbing a set of stairs, are you asking yourself, what is permanently broken with my joints?
Because if you are, that is a deeply limiting defeatist mindset. It just assumes your best days of movement are behind you.
Exactly. But what if you change the core question? What if you ask, what if my joints simply need better lubrication support?
Reframing it that way feels incredibly empowering. Because the first question implies you are a broken machine and just have to endure a slow decline.
And nobody wants that.
No. Well, the second implies your biological machinery is perfectly fine, but just needs a specific resource to function the way it was originally designed to.
It aligns perfectly with the idea that the body hasn't forgotten how to move. The blueprint is still there.
It is a far more modern, scientifically grounded approach to joint wellness.
It honors the mechanical reality of the human body. If joints are biologically designed to move with fluidity and grace, then providing the targeted support to maintain that hydration just makes logical sense.
It really does.
By restoring that healthy, fluid-rich joint environment, you actively reduce unnecessary friction, you support long-term flexibility, and you encourage smoother motion day in and day out.
And reading through the biodynamics philosophy, it's clear this isn't about turning back the clock overnight.
Oh, definitely not. It's not magic.
You don't take a root cause supplement on a Tuesday and wake up with the bouncy joints of a 14-year-old on Wednesday. It takes time to nourish an environment.
Right. Biological changes require consistency.
But it is about consistently providing the specific support your body needs to function mechanically. It's about slowly getting back to a place where movement feels natural and unforced again.
Returning to that natural ease is the ultimate goal because that is what restores the emotional confidence we discussed earlier.
Getting that ease back is everything.
It really is. When your joints feel hydrated and supported, the mental math disappears. You stop calculating the cost of standing up from the couch.
You stop hesitating before suggesting an evening walk.
Exactly. You reclaim your lifestyle from the quiet thief of friction.
We've covered some incredibly vital ground today.
We really have.
We started by completely dismantling this culturally accepted, heavily ingrained myth that stiff, creaky joints are just the inevitable, irreversible result of worn-out aging parts.
Right. We challenge the idea that getting older automatically means getting stiffer.
We replaced that destructive bone-on-bone imagery with the mechanical reality of the dry joint.
Because understanding that the loss of internal fluid-like shock absorption is the actual culprit behind that grinding friction changes everything.
It completely changes the action plan. Knowing that it's behind that notorious morning tightness gives you a path forward.
Yes, a totally different path.
We also unpacked the heavy emotional toll that friction takes. You know, how the quiet loss of physical ease silently shrinks our daily lives, influences our micro decisions, and limits our independence.
The mental toll is just as important as the physical one.
It really is. And finally, we explored how the wellness industry is fundamentally shifting. By looking at root cause hydration solutions like BIODYNAMIX Joint Genesis, the focus is now on actively restoring that internal lubrication environment.
Rather than just slapping a temporary numbing Band-Aid on the discomfort.
Right, because when you support the joint environment properly, the friction fades.
Yeah.
And you get your independence, your ease, and your confidence back.
Viewing our physical longevity through the lens of environmental support rather than inevitable decay is a fundamentally more optimistic and scientifically accurate way to live.
It changes everything. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today.
Let's hear it.
We talked heavily about how the body hasn't forgotten how to move. The architecture, the bone, the cartilage, it's all there. It just needs the right internal environment.
Blueprint remains.
Exactly. So if our bodies perfectly remember how to move and our joints simply need the right internal environment to do so, it makes you wonder, how many other physical limitations have we accepted as the inevitable cost of aging that are actually just reversible environmental issues within our own biology waiting for a root cause solution?
That is a profound question that completely redefines how we view the aging process itself.
Think about that tomorrow morning when you swing your legs over the side of the bed. You might not be as worn out as you think. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.